Good evening. Welcome to the July 12th, 2022 meeting of the USD 305 School Board. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We do have our agenda that's been published this evening. Is there a motion regarding the agenda? Ms. Zimmerman.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to accept. Ms. Casso seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. First item on our agenda is reorganization of the board for the 2022-2023 school year. And that moves us to the position of board president. Is there a nomination for board president? Dr. Bandre.
I nominate Ann Zimmerman.
Okay, we have a nomination for Ann Zimmerman. We'll end the nominations there. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Oh, do we need a motion for that? Okay, so we have a nomination. He did a nomination.
I thought I did. I move we nominate Ann Zimmerman for president of the school board for the next year.
Okay, but you have
Okay, so we have a motion.
to elect and
We have a motion to elect Ann for the next year. Is there a second? Mr. Gardner seconds. So now we'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we move to the position of vice president. I give it to Ann now, and Ann gets to carry over.
Okay, thank you. And before we do that, let me give this to Mr. Fletcher for your year of impressive service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
It has been an unusual year.
And you've done an outstanding job.
Yes. Thank you. So now we are ready for the election of the board vice president. I will say that we have we've come up with a procedure for deciding who we expect to get nominated for positions. And so I think, go ahead, Gabe.
Madam President, I nominate Jim Fletcher.
Okay, so we have a nomination and a second. So Deborah, do we vote on that, or do we vote on the? That would be a
I move that
motion.
the board elect Jim Fletcher to serve as vice president until new officer elections are held at the first regular meeting in July 2023.
Oh, wow, look at that. Second to that, says Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the approval of consent agenda items, which is long today. That includes the appointment of Board of Education Clerk, Deborah Howard, the appointment of the Board of Education Deputy Clerk, Shanna Rector, appointment of Board of Education Treasurer, Lisa Peters, annual resolutions to establish regular meetings, to waive the annual requirements for generally accepted accounting principles and fixed asset accounting, to rescind policy statements found in the minutes, to adopt 1,116 school hours, and to establish home rule, to establish the 2022-2023 official depositories, which include American State Bank and Trust, Bank of Tescott, Bank 6, Bennington State Bank, Capital Federal, Central National Bank, Equity Bank, Exchange Bank, First Bank Kansas, Solomon State Bank, Sunflower Bank, and UMB Bank, to establish the 2022-2023 official newspaper, which is the Salina Journal, to make annual appointments. 1, the Deputy Superintendent, Shanna Rector. 2, school attendance officers, building principals. 3, district coordinator for ADA, bloodborne pathogens, Title VI, EEOC, Title VII, Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX, gender equity. That is Aaron Wright, Executive Director of HR and Legal Services. Number 4, district coordinator for Section 504, that is Aaron Wright. 5, hearing officer, Robert German, attorney at law. 6, custodian of district records, Deborah Howard, board clerk. 7, custodian of building records is the building principals. 8, custodian of student records is Aaron Wright. 9, food service authorized representative is Lane Norris, Director of Food and Nutrition Services. 10, food service hearing officer is Lisa Peters, Executive Director of Business. 11, food service determining officials are the building principals and Lane Norris. 12 is Head Start authorized representative, and that is Lynn Exline, Superintendent. 13 is Capers designated agents, which is who are Aaron Wright and Steve Dorsweiler, who is manager of HR. 14 is the CERMP authorized representative, which is Lisa Peters. 15 is the custodian of activity funds and gate receipts, which is the secondary principals. 16 is the Title I director, Shanna Rector, deputy superintendent. 17, Freedom of Information Officer, Jennifer Camion, Director of Public Information. 18 is the Homeless Coordinator, Jody Craddock Iceland, Director of Support Services. 19, Asbestos Program Manager, Chris Upson, Executive Director of Operations. And 20, Transportation Supervisor, Chris Upson. This also includes the minutes of the June 14th, 2022 regular meeting and the minutes of the June 23rd, 2022 special meeting, the personnel report, the financial reports, which include the end of year bills from June 1 to 2022 to June 30, 2022. The May treasurer's report, May investment report, journal entries for May and June, to approve the June 30th, 2022 unencumbered cash balances, to approve encumbrance listings, including Kansas Educational Technology Consortium in the amount of $21,806.38 for the purchase of WebKids IEP software, the ABC Creative in the amount of $36,469 for the purchase of playground structure for Opportunity Now to be installed at the Salina West Education Center, and to Eagle for VMware software and support in the amount of $21,322. To approve the CKCIE contract with Presence Learning, to approve the Durham School Services contract, to approve the revenue neutral rate, authorizing the administration to prepare the revenue neutral rate calculations, and if applicable, notify the county clerk by July 20th that USD 305 will exceed the revenue neutral rate for the applicable levying funds. To approve the 2022-2023 mileage allowance to establish at the federal mileage reimbursement rate. As of July 1, 2022, the federal mileage reimbursement rate is 62.5 cents per mile. To approve the 2022-2023 petty cash funds for Central High, South High, Heartland Early Education, and the district office at $1,500 per fund. To approve the HVAC repair with Train for an open purchase order in the amounts of $40,000 for ongoing fiscal year 23 repair charges. To approve the HVAC technical support with Building Control Services for an open purchase order in the amount of $75,000 for ongoing fiscal year 23 repair charges. To approve liquidation of excess school equipment and supplies, and to approve the 2022-2023 facility use fees. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President,
Mr. Grant.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Dana, Ms. Casso. Any discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. Is hearing none? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. We come now to the public forum, and we have no one sign up in our new procedure where you had to sign up by yesterday to present at the public forum. The next agenda item is the action agenda, and we will start with the 2022-2023 salary and work conditions for certified staff. Ms. Wright.
Good evening. In June, we finished negotiating with K&E Salina for the contract for certified staff for next year. I'm happy to say we came to an agreement. And we are here tonight to provide you with the terms of those changes and to receive your approval, which is conditioned upon ratification by the teachers. That will go to vote, I believe, in a couple weeks, I think. Their lead negotiator and I are meeting this Thursday, actually, to finalize some of the structure and create a video to explain to the teachers exactly, I guess, professional employees. That was just one of the changes tonight, to provide them with information about what's changed in the contract for the next year. So in your packet, you have a summary of those changes and as well as the actual language to be changed in the agreement. The first one tonight is that we have agreed to the addition of $700 to the base of the certified salary schedule, which will make our base salary $42,000, and to give step and movement on the schedule. We added a few coaching positions to the actual supplemental salary schedule. You all had approved the addition of esports and unified bowling. And so we need coaches for that, and that salary has been, that supplemental salary has been added to the agreement. The biggest change that really changes a lot in the agreement, not substantively, but definitely semantically, we had defined all members of our bargaining unit by the name teacher in prior contracts. There was a request to change that by the association to something more inclusive of all the different types of employees that are included in that bargaining unit. So we settled on the name change from teacher to professional employee, and to change that wherever throughout the agreement as necessary. We added a provision that allows on-site attendance not to be required during work days. There are 2 work days, one at the end of each semester. We are allowing for this year only, and we will reevaluate at the end of this year, that the professional employees will not be required to be on site on those work days. We created an exception to our blackout day rules, which will now allow our employees who have students their children are participating as students of USD 305 in activities. Sometimes those activities are unplanned at the time we create the school calendar. And to allow those parents to be with their kids on those days, we're creating an exception to the blackout day rule for those employees who have students attending in the district. And if they are participating as a student, then the parents/employees will be able to attend those. We increased the salary schedule for school psychs from the special salary from $2,000 to $3,000 to aid in recruitment of school psychologists. And we changed the liquidated damages. Prior to this new contract, if a professional employee resigned between June 5th and June 30th, they were assessed $1,000 in liquidated damages. We have amended that, and then after July 1st, anyone who resigned either after July 1st through the full school year would be subject to $3,000. We have now changed that so that there's just one number, $3,000, for any professional employee who resigns after June 5th. We clarified some language related to transfers, and we added a provision regarding the employee possession of firearms to future contracts. And as you will see, you have the language changes, the substantive language changes in front of you. And we are now recommending that you approve these negotiated changes to the 22-23 negotiated agreement.
Are there any questions or discussion on this?
I'd just say, I again, appreciate the work of our board members who helped with this and all of our professional employees who did such a great job pulling this together. It's nice to see such good collegiality and teamwork in the district.
I wanted to say, I think I heard that the firearms change was a request of the teachers?
Yes, the association requested the addition of that language to the agreement.
Thank you. And I was curious, was it our idea to change the liquidated damages, and can you give me any background on that?
One of the things that, a couple things that have become, we're very aware of now is that it's harder and harder and harder to find replacements when people leave us. And initially, we discussed moving the date for when liquidated damages would come into play, but there's a statutory requirement that says they have 15 days from the non-renewal statutory date in May to respond back to us. So we kind of needed to keep it at June 5th. So our hope is that by increasing that amount and moving that deadline for the $3,000 amount earlier, will hopefully make people think about sort of knee-jerk movements at the last minute. It's very difficult to find employees of all types right now, and we're hopeful this will help us at least have someone stick it out one more year for us.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Fletcher.
I move that we approve the changes to the 2022-2023 salary and work conditions for certified staff as presented, pending the NEA Salina ratification of the agreement.
Second, Mr. Grant seconds. Any other discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, and you are next on the agenda, Ms. Wright, with the 2022-2023 salaries and benefits for classified professional, technical, and substitutes.
So with the addition of dollars to the base salary in the negotiations process, we also now are asking for some changes for our classified staff and professional technical staff, who are, they each have their own additional salary schedule. So we're asking that you add a comparable 1.7% increase to the base of the classified schedule and the professional technical schedule, and allow for step and movement on those schedules as well. We've also asked that you add 1.7% added to the base of the Head Start teacher salary, which mirrors the certified employee salary. They just have a separate one since it's a separate fund. Their schedule is separate, but they would like the same 1.7% addition to their salary schedule. And then we're also asking for a 1.7% increase to the substitutes, the various substitutes across the district. We have a wide range of those working for us in many different capacities, and so they're not left behind. We're asking that you increase those base rates by 1.7% as well.
Do we have a motion? I can't remember. No. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion about this item? Mr. Grant?
Madam President, I move we approve the 2022-2023 wage increases for classified, professional, technical, and substitutes as stated above, and allow for single-step movement on the salary schedule as presented.
Do I have a second? Dana?
Madam President, I need to excuse myself due to a potential conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Bonnie has a question.
Like for substitutes, you have certified substitutes and classified substitutes?
Yes?
So how much are the certified substitutes? Is that up? Where's that
It's
then?
in what the increase will be. after, what the rate will be after the increase is listed in your packet. What we're expecting the standard substitute to make, which is a person who has an education degree with a license for substituting, they would make $17.71 an hour.
Okay, so
moving
the
forward.
certified is called the standard then, okay,
Well,
thank you.
it could also be emergency as well. They're
Okay.
both licensed by the State Department of Education.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or discussion? Then, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you. Would somebody let Jim know he can come back in? Okay, Ms. Wright, next, 2022-2023 salaries and benefits for administrators.
So the changes we're asking for the administrators is to add the 1.7% to the administrator salary. That includes all of our building administrators, our coordinators through the co-op, and district administrators as well, including the superintendent.
Do I hear a motion about this? Yes?
Are all the administrators on a step salary schedule?
There are steps for each year of service.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion, anyone have a motion?
Madam President, I move that for the 22-23 school year that we approve the salary changes for administrators, including the superintendent, as stated.
Thank you. Second, Mr. Fletcher. Any other discussion? I have one question. You're saying 1.7 is comparable to the negotiated agreement,
The $700 to the base
is
is
1.7?
roughly 1.7%.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next is the 2022-2023 handbook for retired certified teachers and retired educators.
So our district maintains a handbook specifically for retired educators who are folks who have either worked for us or another school district in the past, retired from Capers, and then decided to join us back in the retirement as teachers. The language in that handbook is very similar to the negotiated agreement. There are a few things that are different, so that is why we bring this to you separately. They are paid on the certified salary schedule, just like our teachers are, but there are certain things that they're not eligible for that other non-retired professional employees are eligible for. So we bring those to you. What we do is we bring you the language changes that apply to their agreement based on what we agreed to in negotiations. So what you see here are the same. It's the same language changes that you've just approved with the negotiated agreement that also applies to the retired educator's handbook.
I should say, thank you. Do I have a motion? Turn my microphone on when I say it.
Madam President,
Mr. Grant.
move we approve the changes to the 2022-2023 retired certified teachers handbook as presented.
Do I have a second? Bonnie seconds. Do we have any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. And the last thing for Ms. Wright is the board policy.
So at our last meeting, we met and discussed the changes to board policy for this round. And in your packet, you will find the proposed changes along with any corrections or amendments that we made after that work session. And I don't know if I need to go through them again, I can, but otherwise I think it shouldn't be anything new to you. Do any of you have questions related to those policies?
Looks like we don't. So
So we're recommending the policy changes as presented tonight.
I hear a motion.
Do we need to do each policy individually, or can we do the carte blanche?
We can do them all at once.
Madam President, I move that we approve the policy revisions as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Ms. Schamberger seconds. Any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the board representative appointments. Ms. Exline?
As part of the reorganization each year, we have to determine who will be representing you on the different boards that our Board of Education is able to be on in the community and as part of USD 305. And so your leadership has identified who they are recommending for each one of those appointments. And at this time, I just need for you to review those. And if the board is supportive, then approve those appointments for this year. And they are in your packet.
Thank you, and I will mention that Mr. Fletcher and I made these decisions, and there were certain things that several people wanted and certain things that nobody wanted, and so we all got to share the joys and concerns. So, do I hear a motion? Ms. Schamberger?
I move that we approve the 2022-2023 board representative appointments as presented.
Thank you. Second? Mr. Gardner. Seconds. Any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you. Motion carried, 7-0. Finally, on our action agenda is the 2022-2023 Salina Virtual Innovation Academy Handbook with Ms. Rector.
Good evening. I bring back to you information about the virtual school handbook. And I did make an adjustment, or Mrs. Hutton and I looked at the information, and we made an adjustment to the section that is about attendance and truancy. It is in the section that says absent reporting procedure, and that area has been, there's a strike through that area. And so that very first sentence, if your student is not making academic progress due to non-participation in the virtual learning environment, the student will be considered absent from school. And that correction, or that addition, was made to really hone in on the fact that it was the non-participation that was the concern, and that's what triggers the absence in the virtual environment, is the non-participation, not that a student working towards something at a different pace than another student. That will not trigger an absence. It is the non-participation. And then the rest of the information is the same from last month, and so I would, if you have any questions, I would be willing to work with you and answer those.
Any questions? Then is there a motion?
Madam President, I move we approve the 2022-2023 Salina Virtual Innovation Academy Handbook as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Fletcher seconds. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the discussion and agenda, which involves the enrollment study. And instead of Mr. Schwartz presenting, we have Gina Wallace. So here she is. Thank you, Ms. Wallace.
If I can move this over. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, so I'm here with RSP tonight. We completed your enrollment projections and demographer report. So a lot of work went into this. What I'm presenting tonight is kind of a snippet, what we call an executive analysis, executive summary of the full report. So one of the benefits is the initial report that we sent over in June is very robust. You'll see a lot of items that we moved down to the appendix that I recommend definitely reading through. If you guys have questions about anything, I might pull stuff from the appendix, but tonight with this meeting, I'm really going to try to hit those main takeaways. What's the main information that you guys want to know as you go into this next year. So my name's Jenna Wallace. Robert, he's the CEO of the company. We split up all these different meetings. I was head planner for this. So as in, I did most of the analysis, and I met with all of the city and county officials. So when we're talking about growth areas and meetings with the planners, that was all me. So I have more of the on-site analysis, and that's why I got sent here, and then he was at a different meeting tonight. So our analysis is always broken into these kind of 4 parts, with the appendix being the supplementary materials, kind of dependent on the client. Do we put some areas in the appendix or pull them up? It's dependent on you guys and your individual data that we're processing. But you'll see part 1, we'll get into past enrollment, where are students living, what grades are the largest, what grades are the smallest, and the demographics of the community. Part 2, we look into the development and growth potential. So one of the ways we know a growing district will need is it's going to need new development, it's going to need new housing opportunities, and what are these other factors that go in to tell that story. Lastly, part 3, that's kind of the main gist of where we put all these variables that you'll hear about into the projections. So you'll get projections by grade, by building, and all sorts of things. And then leading to the next steps, we've just given you this data dump and all this information, what to do with it, and how to carry that forward. We always provide this first slide so that when you're referencing back year to year, you kind of have a main takeaway of, oh, what did she say back in July 2022? You can reference back to this slide of just saying our overall projection, stable to decrease, and then what we're looking at, capacity of the buildings, and going into what does that look like with the building and development activity. So getting into one of our first variables, I have birth rate information here. So what we look at is the number of students or the number of children that were born in the county. So we're pulling county hospital data, and we reference that into the number of kindergartners so that we can say that the number of kindergarten or the number of children born 1 year, how does that correlate with 5 years later enrollment in the school district? So in this case, you can see we have a pretty stable 68 to 73% enrollment of the live birth total 5 years later. So that we can see that we kind of have this relationship between those. We know it's not a direct correlation because people are born outside the county and they come in, or people are born in the county and they move out. But it's just one of these relationships that we're trying to figure out. In this case, we can see that live births for Saline County have been going down. This is pretty stable. It's definitely happening all over Kansas, and almost all the school districts and counties we're looking at. Live births are decreasing, so something that is a new demographic trend that we're trying to figure out. Not necessarily a negative or anything like that, but it's a different shift that we want to research and keep a watch on. So knowing that we have this relationship with around 70% of the live births, keeping track of per year the number of live births could be a good indicator to watch when you're thinking of what the kindergarten class could be in 5 years. So next table here goes through the past 10 or so years of student enrollment by grade, so we can see the trend that's been happening, and we can kind of see those change over to this side, over to the right of what that looks like year to year. One thing I wanted to note is that these numbers here aren't including the virtual academy, so these are just brick and mortar students that are in the buildings. So we know that decrease of 220 isn't necessarily a total decrease. We do have some of those students that are in the virtual academy, but for this enrollment and this analysis, we're focusing on those students in the building. So we can see that we've had a decrease the last 3 years, which is leading into, when we get into those projections, one other thing that I always recommend as a good rule of thumb is comparing the senior class of last year to the kindergarten class this year. So if you have more seniors that are graduating, exiting the system, and less kindergartners coming in, so you don't have a supply to replace what organically leaves, that's going to be a indicator of a stable to declining enrollment. So trying to think of what are the grades coming in to replace the ones that are leaving. So for this case, last year we had 511 seniors replacing 468 kindergartners. So an overall district loss of just that mere indicator there. This next graphic here is trying to go into, of the student population, what are we looking at for migration of students? So in the orange bars on the right are in migration. So I was not a student last year, and this year I've transferred into the district. So I resided somewhere else. I went to a different, maybe it was parochial or private in the community or somewhere else. And this year I've took services with the district. That would be the in-migration. And so you can kind of see the last 3 years of around 500 in-migration students per year. Out-migration is that vice versa. So I was a student last year, and this year I transferred somewhere else. And so we don't have any of that knowledge of where they go or where they're transferring to. That could be something you and the district could dive into deeper if that's something that you're concerned about. But overall, we're kind of seeing this consistent trend of around 600 out-migration. We can see that increase in 2021. Pretty common, it's the COVID year, so we had more out-migration that year. But an overall net loss the last 3 years of this migration trend, so more students exiting than new ones coming in. This next visual here is the student count change map. So we have a lot of different visuals in the full report. I kind of sifted through and tried to pull out the ones that were most important in this conversation. So for this map here, we're showing the last 5 years. Where in the district did you increase in student counts and where did you decrease? So green areas, that would be the decrease of students, and that's on a gradient. So the darker the green, the higher the decrease. And then orange is where you increase. So we can see there were some pockets of increase, let's see here, around Schilling Elementary, and then north of Sunset, with kind of that older core area being a decrease in student counts for the last 5 years. Some just overall takeaways here. So that section has a lot more information when you go through the full report. It gets more into the model and some of the methodology. So if you guys are interested in, when we get into projections, how all these variables are together, I can talk on that too, but we took that out for this conversation. Just some overall takeaways with those enrollment by grade. We had the overall district decreasing, and we also have some trends of as grades move through the system year to year, you decrease by students. So that's when we're getting into that out-migration. So we saw the middle school and the high school having high out-migration, and that would lead into how grades work their way through the system, getting smaller year to year. Since this is a discussion item, I can pause there. Do you guys have questions about this first part or any clarification I could help with? Yeah.
I'm looking at just the first line, RSP and Associates monitors over 150 planning areas. Is that in Salina, is that what you're talking about? Or is that, you're talking about like where you go
No.
around the country?
No, that's your district. So when we take your district, we don't just look at it as one geography, one district. When you come back to like this map, how we have different pockets of green to orange is what we call planning areas. So we go through the district, we cut into smaller, in this case, 150 planning areas. That way we can see where students are, if they're residing in single family versus multifamily. That means something different in our projection analysis. If the planning area is a growth area with potential new units. Just a way to go into so that when we put everything back into the model, we don't provide it by just one giant number, but each individual planning area, so in this case 150 planning areas, are analyzed in the projection model, which then are summed up for the total analysis. Does that help?
Yes, and I just noticed that there's the white areas too that I hadn't paid attention to that didn't grow or reduce.
Yeah, no real net change there.
Thank you. Any
Yep.
other questions? Yes.
In the statements on the next slide, it said the greatest density is near Heartland and Sunset.
Yes.
And now go back to the map, if you would, for a second. I'm seeing the green showing the decrease nearest Sunset. So they had more to lose? Is that basically what that's saying?
Yes, so I kind of moved this map down. There's a second map that I'm going to get to. That's the actual heat density map,
Okay.
which you'll see that. In this case, we were just kind of seeing the total students, are they increasing and decreasing, and not factoring in where the majority of students are. Normally, we show that heat map up in this first section, but for your district, I kind of moved it down so we can talk through where the growth areas are and the heat density. So I'll jump over to that in a couple slides. So this part 2, development and growth, comes from research with the city. We'll go through. I met with multiple city planners in the community, as well as some of the economic development that's going on. So all that information is from our research coming in, and that's kind of where we get all this and using our expertise of what that looks like 5 years out. We always start with this graphic to kind of justify this part 2, as well as provide a basis of the correlation and the relationship in your district. So what you're seeing here is a change graphic. So year to year, what is the difference between these 3 variables? The green line where you can see stable to decreasing, so it's around 100 loss per year of census population. So from the census year to year, around 100 less citizens that are enrolling in that census population. The blue line is building activity by occupancy of units. So not only how many are being built, but what's the level of occupancy into new units. So we can see pretty stable to very minimal building activity being occupied in the district. And then the red line, that's pretty crazy, that's gonna be the student enrollment. So we know we had years of uptick, we had the decrease in 2019-20, and how we're factoring forward with these 3 relationships. So the enrollment line's pretty crazy, but if we're focusing on those other 2 of decreasing census population and minimal to low building activity.
I have a question about that
Yes.
slide. Do you have any idea, I mean, I'm not sure you would have it, but what happened in 2017 that made so many new students come in?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but it is pretty interesting that there was that uptick that year.
Okay, thank you.
So next slide here is just like a demographic summary. So looking at your population, what are we seeing as just a couple of these variables here. So we have an overall population from 2000 to even a projection of 2026 from the census of decreasing population. Annual rate of housing inventory, so this gets into by decade, and then this 5-year projections. What's the census thinking for housing inventory? So we can see there was a decrease, 2010, 2021. That's that, even though there may be new units being built, it also takes in the fact of demolishes and different changing of zoning patterns. So that's gonna be an overall inventory by the census. So we didn't gather this data, this is just what the census puts out. We also show income there to try to get into a little bit of the economic capability of the community and the unemployment rate. So just some overall takeaways of the demographics of the community. So this next table, this is a lot of information. And what it is it's a really good tool for you guys to have year to year. So in this case, a couple of main takeaways. A student yield rate analysis is an opportunity to look at the number of units in the community and the number of new units, and looking at what does that look for number of students. So when you're coming through year to year of this analysis and you have a new development coming in with new units, what can you expect for the number of new students in the community? So in this case, we show this analysis by 100 housing units. So that way it's a whole number and it kind of makes more sense. So we're not saying, oh, you can expect 1.7 students. No, by 100 units, we can say that in the first case, so that first table, single family, you can expect around 17 students per 100 single family housing units. And then with this, we give this, we go all the way back to 2012, we provide an average, and we show by elementary attendance area. So where the new unit's being built, you can reference this back to see the difference by that elementary attendance area. A couple of cool things here is that we provide this by single family and multifamily. And in this case, the multifamily yield rate is higher than the single family yield rate. So even though there may be more single family units in the district, the multifamily opportunities and multifamily developments yield more students than the single family. And this may be location of the units or the price point of single family and just the affordability of multifamily yielding, you can see on average 19 units or 19 students per 100 multifamily units, with the highest being Cottonwood with, in 2021, 23 students per 100 multifamily units. So if you, like I said, it's a good tool in your toolbox if you have a new apartment complex coming in and it's gonna have, 200 apartments coming in. What does that look like? What elementary attendance area it is, and that helps you guys provide for staffing and these other kind of things. any questions on that? It's kind of a thing to wrap your mind around, but it is a good analysis to provide you guys with.
I think it's amazing, the lower right-hand stat, that there were 0 multifamily homes built from 2012 to 2021. 0. It's amazing.
If you could go back one slide.
Sure.
There was under the observations,
Yes.
is the first bullet there, I guess, was a little surprising to me. Not the fact that the population has been decreasing, but the fact that you're saying we're expected to continue decreasing?
Yeah, the census, when they put out their projections of just entire population, had the population decreasing by that negative 0.048%, which is very minimal, but that's what, yes, the census put out.
How far out does your projection go? It's,
5 years.
okay, because you said it's going to continue to decrease and then the next 5 years, so everything in your report is based on the future of 5 years?
Yes. So kind of going into this, as we're talking about that yield rate, so we inventory your full district for that housing market. So what's the desirability of the market? What's the average age of inventory and the price point? So in this case, this visual here is going, what's the average year built of the units throughout the district on this scale of blue being the oldest before 1980. The newer developments to the east we can see are less affordable, higher median home value. What's interesting, and this is what I was referencing when I said that heat map, is I pulled this down from the other section because I wanted to be able to flip through and talk about where we saw the hottest student density. So you can see south of Sunset and kind of around Heartland Education Center is the hottest part of student density. So referencing back where the affordability was and the older inventory, where we have the hottest part of student density for this year. So those hot pockets are where the highest student density is, and where we saw the new units after 2000, where we saw the higher median home value and the least affordable, we haven't seen a student impact yet. So we've seen, and we talked about that yield rate of multifamily and the affordability aspect of the new housing units with students coming into the system, and just where the density and where you're going to have the most opportunity for student growth is going to be. This next visual kind of goes into this development activity over time, so trying to put in perspective what had been happening in decades past and what we're looking at for the last 3 decades in the district. So in this case, the green bars are going to be the total number of units in each decade that are existing, and then the blue are the new ones that are built in that decade. So we can see how many new units were built per decade and how that goes into the next decade. So most of the units, 1950 to 1980 into the 90s, is where we saw the most units built, with that average year built of 1955 in the district. So you can see from 2000 to 2020, really, only about 700-ish units built in that 20 years going into this 3rd decade after 2000. So going into where are the new units, and like we said earlier, that the lack of multifamily units is also playing into this with the affordability and where the single-family units are coming into and how that corresponds with student location. So next couple of visuals here go into this future and potential growth. So like I said, this comes from conversations with the planner. We go through the planning commission documents. They tell us where areas are currently happening, what areas could be, and what is even farther out. So that's what you're going to see with these color gradients. The green areas are those planning areas that are current or about to be developed areas. All of this is contingent on everything in the economy, and developers change their minds all the time. So this is our best guess or best kind of analysis at this point of time in the area. So those green areas at least have available infrastructure, and they are waiting on developer interest and different economic things to begin developing. Those yellow areas are more on a 5-year timeline, so that's maybe contingent on infrastructure. So we know that Magnolia Road is going to get some infrastructure improvements. That's really going to open up connectivity over to the east, so you can see even farther out. We have some 10-year, that purple area, so even farther out than this projection analysis, what could be in the 10 years also developed. So in this case, we're looking at the northeast, so you can see down south, we have some pockets of some current with that potential as infrastructure gets filled in up to the northeast. Northwest, less development here, so we have Magnolia Square as far as a current development and some other areas that would be some future multifamily if things pale out. So those are some areas that were identified as some potential growth and would maybe awaiting some more city council approval or these types of things. So some areas to watch as well. And then southeast, so kind of focused in down here on some current and 5-year growth potential as well. And then southwest, we have some more potential, maybe multifamily, that's on the west side of 35, and some Meadowlark is a current development that should be starting pretty soon as well. So an overall view of those 4 quadrants that we're looking at for that potential development. If you're more of a visual person, you can kind of focus more on those maps. If you're more numbers, we also provide this in this table here. So we have potential units. What is the developer saying they could build? What's the existing, if they are in progress right now? We have the current units and plats, so we know what's currently in existing units. So we can kind of piece together here that if we're looking at this full potential of 10-year total, we have over 6,000 potential units to be built. Around 800 in this current mark. So to be occupied within the next couple of years is around that 800 mark. We also wanted to go through some indicators of growth that are just in the community. So we know we have some economic opportunities. So Great Plains is expanding jobs, as well as Schwann's expanding their new wing of manufacturing. So we have some other potentials that would bring in some community draws. So always want to factor those in, as well as those infrastructure improvements. So providing the opportunity for more developers to come in, Magnolia Road, Holmes Road, these kinds of things that would also be incentivizing for future development. Some overall takeaways here, but I hit most of this, so I'll go ahead and get into this final part, which is the projections. So in this case, we're showing past into the projected enrollment here. We show this breaking it down by elementary, middle, and high school. So the red bars, that's going to be your elementary projections. Blue bars is middle school, and green is high school. So we can see here that we're projecting out in 5 years the district to decrease by about 220 students. Elementary, factoring in an increase of about 150 students. Middle school to decrease about 230, and high school to decrease about 140. So some growth at the elementary level, but decrease as the smaller grades make their way into the middle school and high school. When we were talking about how the high school was bigger, those 500 students, they're not replaced by other 500 student grades. So automatically we're having a decrease when we look into elementary or high school and middle school grades. But potential for those growth for new families moving in, so potential for elementary to increase. So this is just one view that's kind of the main takeaway of the district. This next table here, we provide that on a building analysis. So it's pretty small to hard to read, but it gives a lot of information. So in this case, we're showing all the buildings in the district, and the colors to the side, so the blue to green, that indicates the feeder. So if they're either go to Lakewood and Central, or if they go to South, kind of references back and forth to the boundaries. In this case, we also show the school capacity. So that was provided by the district of what the school reports as their student capacity. So we're referencing that when we go through the projections, can they be accommodated with the school capacity? Next, you can see the purple, blue, and green numbers. So these are different ways we're showing the projections. So we have the past school enrollment to kind of get your bearing. So in this case, the blue as reside. So when we take the students, we put them into the system, what school boundary are they residing in? And that's going to be the most accurate projections there. The next is the green is the attend. So we have student movement. If your mom is a teacher and she attends somewhere else, teaches somewhere else and outside where you leave, your students probably go over there, and that would be a difference of the reside and attend. We also have different programming and just different transfer reasons. And so there is a difference between the reside projections and attend projections. That subset, the purple, is saying what's the number of students that reside and attend. So just some pretty cool, we can look at the past and we go into the future, into the projections. We provide that both ways. So in this case, that pink box is the only area where we exceed the building capacity. So at Cottonwood Elementary, in 2026-27, we're projecting to exceed building capacity in the reside. So in this case, you're getting close to capacity at this school, but as we factored in student movement in the attend, we're not exceeding capacity. So something to think about as we look at student transfers and these kinds of things, that you do have a tool between your capacity with the buildings. Overall, with the elementary, you can see that we're coming up to 3,320 elementary students with over 4,000 school capacity seats. So you have capacity for the elementary growth that we're forecasting. Getting into the secondary, similar format here. None of the buildings exceed the capacity, as we said, that we have declining at the secondary level. So we can see the differences between buildings there. Lastly, we projections by grade as well. So this provides a good tool as you're going year to year to see how the forecast is coming year to year. So at this point, you're probably either going through, have finished up kindergarten roundup, so looking at your number of kindergartners rounded up and how that's looking for each year. So you can see around 520 forecasted this year, and then going up more, and then decreasing a little bit, but all above that 515 mark. We're seeing the average elementary school class size to decrease a little bit in the elementary level, but you can see more in the middle school and high school that average class size decreasing as those, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade cohort makes their way through the system in these next 5 years as some of those smaller grades. So just a different way to look at these projections as you guys use this tool to plan ahead. So just some overall takeaways there. Peak enrollment we have forecasted for the elementary level for 2025-26. Middle school peak enrollment next year, high school peak enrollment next year as well. So middle school and high school to continue decreasing for these next 5 years as elementary increases. Yep.
Isn't that, then, so it's more hopeful after 5 years, after those, that increased elementary comes into the middle school and high school?
Exactly,
it
yes.
will come back.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's kind of ends the presentation as far as new information. You see these overall conclusions here. Some of those main things I want to leave you with is those growth potential of where those things are coming in, and really looking at the affordability aspect of the new developments. Just because there's new housing doesn't always directly correlate with new students. So trying to see where are they located, what's the affordability corresponding into projections, and what we would actually see for potential new young families moving into the district. Is there any questions I can help clarify? If I can't, I can always come back with my team and give a better answer later too.
I have a question, and where do we see the whole report? Is that on the website somewhere?
No, I will get the whole report to you.
Okay, thank you.
It's a tremendous amount of data, and I appreciate how well you've handled it and your clear knowledge of everything that's there, but it's going to take some time to study for my part, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I guess we don't have any other questions. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the school board committee reports and upcoming dates of importance. The dates of importance include Friday, August 5th, the district-wide staff meeting at Central High, which is at the late hour of 8 a.m., right? Isn't that half an hour later than usual? Okay. Thursday, August 11th is the first day of school, and November 11th and through 13th is the Kansas Association of School Boards Conference in Wichita. I guess we will start with Dr. Bandry. We're going to see what we've been doing.
This is the first time I've been here for a while. I missed the June meeting, for which I apologize, but I had a family appointment that had been delayed 2 years due to COVID, so it was nice to be there, and I appreciate everybody's support. I enjoyed reading the minutes and so forth from there. Since then, in May, I gave the last You Make a Difference Award, which was to Ms. Chesney at Central High, and it was fun to go in to wander the halls with Dr. Brungart and get that taken care of. Also in May, we had just before our meeting in May, we had the Salina Education Foundation Executive Committee meeting, just after we had the full board meeting. And a cool thing about the full board meeting, it was held at the Garage, the new museum downtown. Yeah. So a good discussion, of course, but it was also nice that we were able, as parts of the community, to tour that and be involved. I think the key thing I would say for Salina Education Foundation, because as we just approved, I've now attended my last SEF meeting for a little while. I'm very, very, very pleased with the work Michael Chambers is doing. There's been nice growth in some of the endowed scholarships in terms of overall fund, in terms of visitability in the community. I am very hopeful that the LIFT program and other things that relate to that will help increase access to more people staying to teach in Salina. It's the right thing to do, is the bottom line. And I think Mr. Chambers is the right person to be leading that effort. He's also been putting a lot of time into recruiting other trustees. And this last year, we lost 3 people going off the board that had a lot of institutional memory, not just on that, but in the community. And I'm excited about new folks coming in, what they can do and help to learn. So I just hope that we can keep on doing all possible to support SEF. It's a tremendous program for everything that we try to do. And then I would also share that in May, I attended the Smoky Hill Education Service Center meeting. I missed the one in June. It happened to occur a day after our board meeting, so I missed that one as well. But they too are doing good work trying to make best use of limited funds and some struggles to hire the right people for the right positions. But I think they provide a lot of service for our district, and the value added of what we kind of farm out to them makes a good difference, good opportunity. I also attended our retreat, so we'll get that in the work. And thank you, Deborah, for a tremendous amount of work pulling the whole booklet together. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
Not much has happened. Summer is actually going a little too fast. Could we move that August 11th date out a little bit? That would really help. Did the retreat. I also went to the adult graduation, which was different considering we had the tornado watch. So we had to move that, but it was fun. Outside of that, I haven't really had anything else to do, but if you could work on that date, that would help.
Mr. Fletcher.
I think I participated in most of the things that have been said here with the retreat and the adult ed graduation.
And Ms. Schember.
I also attended the retreat and I attended the adult education graduation, which was pretty amazing. And then I've been doing some research on, like, where did the public schools really start? You know, because if we know where the foundation was. So, and I really haven't heard this guy. I think you'll enjoy this information. But Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, was one of the first founders to call for free national public schools in 1790. But he also started 5 other colleges and universities. He was the first abolition movement. He started that, and he had a medical and teaching career. And he had those degrees before he was 19 years old. But he wrote, the purpose of the public education was threefold. And so this is back in 1790. He said, number 1, to teach students to love and serve God. Number 2, to teach students to love and serve their country. and 3, to teach students to love and serve their families. So I just thought it would be good to know where we came from so we know where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
I also attended the retreat. Appreciate the work from Lynn and Deborah and all the executive directors that brought presentations and went into that. It was a great day. Discussions and more learning about the good things going on in the district. I was unable to attend the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting in June, and there was no CKCA Board of Control meeting. Thanks.
Yes, Dana.
I attended the board retreat as well.
Thank you. And I attended the board retreat and the Adult Education Center graduation that was mostly spent in the tornado shelter. It made us really appreciate the tornado shelter, which of course is a gym-sized room, and worked out all right. I just regret that they didn't bring the cookies in to the shelter. I think there was one other thing I was going to say. I would just remind anybody who's watching that today is the last day to register to vote, and for the primary election on August the 2nd. And let's turn it over to Ms. Exline for the superintendent report.
Okay, I have just a few things that I want to share with you. The first is, you'll recall that some time ago, we had an evening session where we had just kind of a dialogue with community members. And one of the things that we talked about that night was creating opportunities for us to engage in more of that kind of dialogue, me specifically. And so I have been working on getting those scheduled, and I am going to call it Salina Public Schools Chat, SPS Chat. And we will talk about, come see how Salina Public Schools is growing greatness. What I'm planning is 4 community sessions this year, 4 student sessions this year, and then monthly staff sessions this year. The community sessions will be a combination of information and conversation. And the first I have planned for September, I'm going to do 2 different community sessions. One will be in the evening here at the board office, and the other will be in the morning in a school each time. And so during the day, so that we can maybe see what's happening in some classrooms, but I felt like I needed to maybe offer an after hours kind of option too. And we'll see what attendance is, and then whether I continue to do 2 or just go to 1. I think that probably during the day session will be more popular because seeing kids is probably more exciting than seeing me. But that's my plan right now. The first session, my focus will be on strategic planning and belonging. Because we will be just beginning the year and really building relationships. And so that will be the first session. And as far as the quarterly sessions and the monthly sessions with staff and students, my plan is that those will be more listening and just asking, what's your experience? What do I need to know about what's happening from your vantage point? And the plan will be to get into about half of the buildings this year, to hear from the staff there, and then the following year, I'll try to get in the other half of the buildings. So that's the plan right now. I also wanted to update you on enrollment. Online enrollment opens tomorrow. Am I saying that right, Mrs. Rector? Okay. So I want to say a thank you to Lane Norris and her team, and a thank you to Michelle Forney and her team. They have been working countless, and I mean countless hours, 18 to 20-hour days, trying to get everything in place that they need for the food service counts. That was no small lift. And so if you see the software folks from the MIS staff, give them a pat on the back, and if you see Lane Norris and her staff, same thing. I admire what they do and the precision that was needed. A lot of the uploads that were supposed to be automatic didn't happen like that, and so a lot of hand data entry and trying to make things easier for our families. The goal was that if a family didn't need to fill out the paperwork, that they would know that up front and to try to save our families time. And so just trying to make this the very best place to learn and the best place for our families, and they went above and beyond to that mission. I also want to thank Shanna and her team for preparing for enrollment. That online enrollment starts tomorrow, and for the first time, families that are new to the district, which would include our pre-K families, our kindergarten families, and new families, they were able to register online. And what that means is they would be able to also do the enrollment online, and they wouldn't have to go to walk-in enrollment. We are still offering that walk-in option because for some families, that additional support is helpful. But we opened that up and we had over 500 students are already registered that we wouldn't have known were coming. And so thank you to Shanna and her team working with MIS staff to make that happen. And again, another way that we are trying to make this the best place for our families and for kids. Let's see what else I should tell you. On the July 26th is the actual in-person walk-in enrollment for families that are needing that. We will have staff there to support families that are needing that additional assistance. And on that date, we will also be hosting the back-to-school fair. It's the first time we've combined the back-to-school fair with enrollment. And so Central will be a flurry of activity on July 26th. We'll see how that works. And I appreciate everybody being willing to take a risk and just see if that makes it more convenient for families. On that date, families will have the opportunity to access community resources, physicals, also dental checkups, and so there's a lot that is going to be going on there at Central High. We will have staff from every single building there to meet with families that do drop in for that walk-in enrollment. So big day coming up there. I also want to highlight something that Chris Upson is doing in his department. Yesterday was the kickoff of, it's Tuesday, right? Was the kickoff of his Emerging Leaders program. He is trying to really develop leadership capacity within his departments, and it has a program where he has selected, folks applied, and he has selected people that are seeing, 3 to 5 years out. I'm wanting to grow, and I want to position myself for a leadership position, perhaps formally, perhaps informally. And so, Chris, they started that yesterday, and I just want to say that's an anomaly in the state to have that kind of leadership development. We have our Salina Teacher Leadership Academy that's getting ready to kick off for our teachers, but to have that as well, we really are working on how do we make sure that staff have the opportunity for that professional growth and toward that mission of being the best place to work. So. Yes.
When did you say the walk-in enrollment date is?
It is July 26th.
What time?
It actually is from 11 to 7. We shifted the hours a little bit. And that back-to-school fair some of the events in the back-to-school fair will be that entire time, and others will be for a shorter period of time. And so Jennifer and her office is doing a great job of getting that information out. But 11 to 7 on July 26th. So feel free to pop by. It's at Central only. We're doing it all in one place so that all of the resources are available in one place for families.
We're at Central. Is it all in one spot?
The back-to-school fair will enter on where the student entrance is on the south side of the building, and people to enroll can enter there as well, and we'll have people to direct them. But the enrollment will happen more in kind of that coming in from the north side of the building to try to help with traffic. And so Jennifer will be getting out information about where to park, but families will be able to access both of those things because they'll be set up kind of in the hallway, and then the individual buildings will be set up in classrooms for a little bit more privacy and to be able to support families. So.
I had a question about you said that enrollment starts tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yes, but 500 families have already registered. Is that For a kindergarten roundup, or what was that? How-
So
they have-
registration and enrollment are two different things. Those 500 students, we didn't know that they were coming to USD 305. So we know that Allison Exline was here last year and is planning to be here again next year. But those 500 students were students that were not in our system last year that we know now are planning to come to USD 305. Now they have to enroll. But in order for us to activate their, the parents' accounts to where they can get in and enroll the student, we needed for them to register. And so this is the first year that we've allowed that to happen online. And what that does is just streamline things for those families. And again, if they want to come in person, they can, but it's just a way for us to know who's coming.
How do
Does
people
that help?
know to do that? Is that like if they move to town, they call up and say, what do I do? And you say, go to this spot on the website? or-
Sometimes. We have done a media blitz.
Media blitz, okay.
Jennifer has
not
really
using that
been getting information out through our social media and through our other media outlets. The other thing is that with our young kids, the kindergartners, we do the kindergarten roundups in the spring, and so the buildings are actually asking, do you know a kindergartner? Do you know somebody that's about school age? And collecting those from their current students so that they can reach out to those families. So it's a combination of efforts between the staff at the building level, staff at district level, and it takes all of us. So we want kids here on day one. And sometimes when, when people start to see a flurry of activity on the enrollment day, that increases interest too.
Thank you. I think we have come to the end of our agenda. Unless I know of other things to do, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Gabe moves to adjourn. Any second? Ms. Schamberger seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Meeting adjourned.